A woman on the verge of marriage. Two children sleeping soundly inside what was believed to be the safest place of all, yet only a few hours later. A tragedy unfolded within that home, causing everything to collapse completely and plunging the entire Jackson community into shock and fear. What truly happened behind the doors of that house? And why did a future once full of promise come to an end in such a heartbreaking way? I take everyone to the city of Jackson, Michigan, United States, a place once known for its quiet pace, where neighbors recognized familiar faces and life moved more slowly than in many major cities. In 2014, Jackson was home to Frances Marie Craig, 28 years old, affectionately known by everyone as Franny. In the memories of her friends, Franny was the kind of person who brought positive energy the moment she walked into a room. Her laughter spread quickly, and her sense of humor was natural and warm. She was so approachable that many people said meeting Franny for the first time felt like reconnecting with someone they had known for years. And for Franny, helping others seemed instinctive, something she did without needing a reason. Because of that, the love people had for her was almost impossible to count. As the mother of two very young daughters, one 5 years old and the other 3, while also juggling 2 different jobs, Franny's life barely had room for the idea of a slow day. Yet what I always think of when I remember her is not the busyness or the exhaustion, but the way she still managed to hold on to her smile, her kindness, and a warmth that was uniquely her own amid the pressures of everyday life. Franny's friends once told me that she had always loved the idea of getting married. Even before she was in a serious relationship, Franny would often smile and talk about her future wedding as if it were something inevitably waiting for her. But the real turning point came in 2012 when she ended her relationship with the father of her children and then found a deep connection with Eric Wolf, who was 29 years old at the time. Eric had been through a failed marriage and also had a young daughter named Alexis. Yet what stood out to me was how both families seemed to blend together almost immediately, naturally and without effort. 2 years later, they decided to live together, and when Eric proposed a lifelong commitment, Franny was so happy that she threw herself straight into preparing for the big day. One friend recalled that Franny planned the wedding with a mix of excitement and humor, even jokingly calling herself a demanding bride. With the wedding only about a month away, the couple bought a new house for their small family, and in the stories Franny shared during that time, I could clearly feel her big dreams and a future she truly believed was finally smiling back at her. On the morning of August 10th, 2014, at around 6:30 a.m., Eric returned to their home in Jackson, Michigan, after a 12-hour overnight shift and quickly fell asleep downstairs, completely exhausted. A few hours later, the quiet of the morning was shattered when his daughter ran downstairs in a panic, shaking him hard and waking him in a state of confusion. She had just entered the bedroom and witnessed a scene that terrified her to the core. Franny was lying motionless on the floor, her body no longer warm. In that moment, as I see it, the fragile line between an ordinary morning for a family and the beginning of an unimaginable tragedy inside that house was crossed without warning.
Yeah, I got somebody to my house right now. My fiance, I think she's dead.
Okay, so has she been sick?
No, there's blood everywhere.
Do you know where it's coming from?
I don't know.
Okay, can you tell if she's breathing?
She's not. She's cold. She's dead.
Police and emergency medical teams arrived shortly after receiving the urgent call, and their first priority was to remove the children from the house to ensure their safety, while the surrounding area was quickly sealed off with warning tape. Outside, Franny's friends began to gather, each of them hoping this was nothing more than a terrible misunderstanding or a cruel rumor spiraling out of control. But what awaited upstairs left even seasoned investigators shaken. Franny had suffered an extent of severe harm that was difficult to comprehend. Her body was found wedged between the bed and the wall, with marks from plastic zip ties still visible on both wrists, indicating that she had been restrained inside the privacy of her own home before those bindings were removed. According to authorities, the severity of what occurred went far beyond ordinary limits, reflecting a frightening loss of control by whoever was responsible. Outside the house, just a short distance away, Franny's phone was discovered badly damaged, likely dropped along the path of departure or deliberately destroyed to sever any final trace of communication. Franny's death was quickly determined by authorities to be a tragedy caused by deliberate actions. However, the specific details of how the incident unfolded were kept strictly from the public. In reality, the media had access to very limited information, as police tightly controlled all related data to protect the integrity of the investigation. All key physical evidence, including the plastic zip ties found at the scene, was sent to the Michigan State Police Forensic Laboratory for in-depth analysis. As is standard in any investigation, those closest to Franny were the first to be questioned, which led investigators to her fiancé, Eric. From his very first statements, what Eric said raised concern and confusion among detectives, as there was something in his manner of speaking and his reactions that did not fully align with what they would normally expect at that moment.
I came home this morning because I work 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Mm-hmm. I went upstairs, I checked both the girls' room before going in our bedroom.
Did you see anything on the mattress when you first came in?
I guess I might have saw that streak. I thought maybe she had been drinking or something because she was in almost like a funny position on the floor, which she doesn't drink hardly ever. I knew better than to wake her. I know from prior experience whenever I've woken her up, she's not a morning person and I get yelled at.
According to the officers who worked directly with Eric, what drew their attention was not his specific words, but his emotional state. Eric showed no visible shock, nor did he display the anger or clear grief they typically saw in people who had just experienced such an overwhelming blow. The atmosphere in the interview room therefore became heavy and difficult to read. And just as the conversation was nearly coming to an end, Eric suddenly added one more remark, a short sentence, but one that was enough to make the investigators exchange wary looks.
Up till just now, maybe since we've been here, I thought that if it wasn't an accident, then it was probably self-induced.
You mean suicide?
Yeah. And the only reason I say self-induced is just because of how high-strung everything is right before this wedding, and
it's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
For investigators, it was clearly an unusual and difficult to explain comment given the circumstances of what had just occurred. When they reviewed security records at Eric's workplace, the data showed that he had badged out at around 6:30 a.m., matching the end of his shift. However, the problem was that not all exits of the building were continuously monitored by cameras, and that gap quickly became a major question mark. This detail forced police to consider the possibility that Eric could have left his workplace briefly and then returned without any recorded footage, a theory that, while lacking concrete proof, was enough to prevent them from ruling him out of suspicion at that time. Franny's friends shared with me that although they were genuinely happy to see her on the verge of marriage, something Franny had long dreamed of for many years deep down. Not everyone was convinced that Eric was the right person for her. A few even admitted that from very early on, they felt something was off, and suspicions began to surface almost immediately, with some believing that Eric could be connected to the tragedy. In the face of growing scrutiny and constant whispers, Eric firmly denied any involvement in his fiancée's death, insisting that he was completely innocent.
Did you?
No.
Know what?
No, I didn't do this. I didn't know anything about it. I walked in And I walked out, went to sleep, got up, went back in, and reported it.
But that brings me back to the questions we just asked. You made it at least halfway into that
I
bed.
did make it, and I admit that, and I'll admit that in front of whoever needs to hear it. But I want to make that perfectly clear that my stance on this is exactly what I said. I went in for whatever reason it was. I didn't react.
Because of the exceptionally serious nature of the case, and while all questions remained unanswered, Franny's daughters and Eric's daughter were temporarily placed in the care of other family members, a way to keep the children away from the center of the chaos surrounding that house. Friday, August 15th, 2014 became an almost suffocatingly heavy day for everyone, as it should have been Franny's 29th birthday, and no one could stop thinking about what had happened just 5 days earlier. At her workplace, Franny's co-workers spent the entire day pooling together all of their tips, hoping to help cover part of the cost for her final farewell. What weighs on me most as I reflect on this is a painfully clear truth. Franny had no enemies, no personal conflicts, and everyone who had ever known her agreed there was no reason for anyone to want to harm her, let alone imagine that such a tragedy could befall someone as gentle and loving as Franny. After that, authorities expanded the investigation to Franny's workplace, questioning whether anything within that environment could be connected to the tragedy. There, they learned that during a previous shift, Franny had once discovered a group of young men engaging in unauthorized taking of items and had confronted them directly. But the situation quickly escalated when their mother returned and carried out a serious assault against Franny. That incident left her with not only physical injuries, but also lingering emotional distress. The woman involved was later held accountable and convicted. Her record was clear, and she also had a solid alibi, which led investigators to rule her out as a suspect. Police then continued their work by speaking with a former boyfriend of Franny, who had recently returned to the Jackson area, but he was unable to provide any information of value to the investigation. In addition, a former roommate of the couple named Ryan was brought in for questioning. During the interview, Ryan spoke in defense of Eric's character, describing him as a kind person and stating that he had never noticed any signs of instability or trouble in the relationship between Franny and Eric. By this point, I could clearly sense that investigators had nearly reached the limits of every familiar line of reasoning, and they understood that their greatest hope now rested with the forensic results, a process demanding absolute precision and one that could not happen overnight. While waiting, Eric remained at the center of suspicion, and police continued patiently piecing together even the smallest details in search of the full picture. Amid that tense atmosphere, a memorial service for Franny was held, drawing a large turnout from the community. Prosecutors later shared that even her regular mail carrier attended, simply because Franny had left such a lasting impression, a testament to how deeply she was loved. Yet despite the prayers and the sense of unity in that moment, an undercurrent of unease quietly settled over Jackson, because the truth remained that the person responsible for the tragedy had not yet been identified, and an unspoken fear caused everyone to be cautious within what had once been considered the safety of their own homes. About 3 months later, when all of the physical evidence collected from the scene had finally been fully analyzed, the investigation took a sudden turn in a completely unexpected direction. On the plastic zip ties, forensic experts discovered genetic material, and the results showed that it did not belong to Eric, nor did it match any individual who had previously been questioned. Instead, the data led police to an unfamiliar name, Cortez Butler, 43 years old, an individual with a prior conviction in a serious case who was, at the time, out on parole after serving a lengthy sentence. This discovery genuinely stunned authorities, because based on everything they knew, Cortez appeared to have no direct connection to Franny at all. He did not live near the Jackson area, had never worked with her, and there seemed to be no link between the two whatsoever. At that time, even police could not determine whether the presence of that genetic material was simply the result of coincidence, such as Cortez having worked somewhere that used similar zip ties, or whether there was a darker scenario behind it, like someone having hired him to carry out the tragedy. To clarify this, investigators tracked down the parole officer responsible for Cortez Butler and, through that connection, obtained access to his phone communication records. That data quickly opened a new path when it revealed frequent contact with two other names, Rodney McKee and Clifford McKee. Rodney was known as someone with a long history tied to unlawful activities, while Clifford, Rodney's uncle, had previously spent many years incarcerated for a serious case in the past. As these connections gradually came to light, I had the sense that the picture of the case was beginning to reveal layers far more complex than originally assumed, and that Franny's story was being pulled into a dangerous web she had never been connected to at all. Police quickly determined where Cortez was being held, as he had in fact recently been arrested in connection with another tragedy. An elderly man named Charles Graham, 79 years old, had died following a conflict involving money and the use of harmful substances, and Cortez was believed to be directly involved. What caught everyone off guard was that when investigators began questioning him about Franny, Cortez did not evade or deny anything. Instead, he appeared remarkably calm, stated that he knew exactly who Franny was, admitted that he had personally caused what happened, and said he was willing to recount the entire sequence of events under one condition, only that the conversation not be recorded. In a state of near desperation for answers, police agreed to this condition, even though they clearly understood it was a highly risky decision, as an unrecorded confession could later become a serious vulnerability if the case were brought to court. Detectives went straight to the central question whether Eric Wolf was the one behind everything, but Cortez Butler insisted that Eric had no involvement at all. According to him, the person at the center of it all was Rodney McKee, and from there, a chain of truths slowly came to light, outlining a twisted and shocking plan that had been set in motion just months before Franny's tragedy occurred. Everything traced back to March 2014, when an apartment in Jackson, Michigan was suddenly set ablaze, and Rodney was quickly arrested in connection with the incident, along with possession of a concealed, dangerous item. According to investigative records, Rodney's motive stemmed from personal resentment after a woman named Donna refused to assist him in unlawful activities. As a result, Donna and her son lost their home, and the critical detail was that Donna's son was Ryan, the same person who had previously been a roommate of Franny and Eric and had already given a statement to police. Ryan lived with them only briefly before moving out, and by June 2014, Franny and Eric had finally found what they believed was the perfect house and moved in. Before the arson case went to trial, Rodney sought out his uncle, Clifford, with one very clear goal: to find out where Ryan was living. Because Ryan was the key witness who could force Rodney to face severe consequences. Driven by desperation and resentment, Rodney began to consider eliminating Ryan to silence him, and Clifford reached out to Cortez Butler, an old acquaintance from his time in prison, offering $10,000 for a highly dangerous task. The problem was that the only address they had ever associated with Ryan was the home of Franny and Eric. According to Cortez's later account, he broke into the house through an unlocked garage door, quietly went upstairs, and paused for a moment when he realized the children were sleeping peacefully in their rooms. He then found Franny resting, restrained her with plastic zip ties, covered her eyes, and repeatedly demanded to know where Ryan was, only to be told that she had no idea. What followed was a sequence of actions that spiraled far beyond any limit of control, leaving irreversible consequences for a completely innocent person. Prosecutors later stated that Franny was the embodiment of an unintended victim, someone who had never been part of the original plan, yet bore the full weight of its distorted outcome. Thinking about this now, I genuinely shudder at the realization that Ryan himself had once been dangerously close to harm, and that even after everything went wrong, the trio did not abandon their pursuit, continuing to monitor him in silence until Cortez was arrested in time, bringing an end to a chain of danger that could have gone on much longer. On September 1st, 2015, Cortez Butler entered a no-contest plea to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 25 to 40 years in prison in the case involving Charles Graham. 1 month later, Cortez, Rodney, and Clifford were all charged with murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and first-degree home invasion. Open murder refers to a charge that encompasses both first and second-degree murder, allowing the jury to determine the appropriate degree based on the evidence presented. The McKee relatives were also charged with solicitation to commit murder.
Francis Craig, contrary to MCL 750.316. This is a felony, life DNA to be taken upon arrest. Count 4, home invasion, first degree, did break and enter or did enter without permission a dwelling located 5220 Timbercrest Trail, and while entering, present in or X10 parent A, parent 2, felony, 20 years and or 5,000.
Fortunately for the prosecution, the off-the-record statements that officers had previously heard from Cortez were ultimately permitted by the court to be presented as part of the trial proceedings. At the same time, the analysis of communication data produced decisive evidence. Phone records showed that Clifford and Cortez were both present in the Jackson, Michigan area at the exact time the tragedy occurred, and that the two had contacted each other more than 200 times within just a few days before and after the incident. In total, more than 8,000 pages of phone data were meticulously reviewed by investigators and prosecutors. During the trial, Cortez displayed a defiant attitude, smirking at the cameras and boasting about his past misconduct while on the witness stand. But when questioning turned to Franny, he abruptly reversed course and denied everything he had previously admitted. Prosecutors argued that Cortez was attempting to stall and control the narrative in the way that best served his own interests. Ultimately, Rodney McKee, then 27 years old, Clifford McKee, 49 years old, and Cortez Butler, 43 years old, were all found guilty by the jury of the most serious criminal charges under the law, including planning and conspiring to cause exceptionally severe harm and unlawfully invading another person's home. While the McKee relatives were further determined to have acted as the instigators and coordinators of the entire plot.
Convicted in the murder for hire case in Jackson will be sentenced today. Cortez Butler, Rodney McKee, and Clifford McKee have all been found guilty of first-degree murder in the stabbing death of Francis Craig in 2014. Butler was also convicted of home invasion, and the McKees were convicted of conspiracy and solicitation of murder. Clifford McKee hired Butler to kill a Jackson man who witnessed his nephew Rodney McKee commit arson. Butler thought the witness lived with Francis Craig and her fiance, Eric Wolf, and broke into their home. He then tied up Francis Craig and stabbed her. All three men face life in prison without parole.
In the end, all three men were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a verdict that reflected the severity of what they had caused. Clifford McKee, in particular, refused to appear at the sentencing hearing. In the heavy atmosphere of the courtroom, Franny's mother, Robin, stood up and spoke to them directly.
Years, 360 days is all the time that these two, minus the one that didn't have the balls to come here today, chose for us to have our daughter. As of August 10th, 2014, our lives have never been the same, nor will they ever be again. You took from our family the most precious, beautiful person in the world. Frances was our everything. Losing her is the most excruciating pain you have to endure. We have to wake up every morning knowing that there will never be another phone call, another conversation. We will never hear her laugh again or see her beautiful smile. Every holiday there will always be an empty chair. The last night of her life, she took her children to the fair, something she loved to do. She took them home and put them to bed because she had to work the next day. Little did she know that would be the last hug and kiss she would ever get from them. She was in her house, and if you're not safe there, you're not safe anywhere. You went in there and did what you did. You left our only child on the floor to let her innocent little babies find her the next day. You left us with the task of explaining to them why they no longer have a mother and how there's bad people in the world and they hurt their mommy. We had to explain to them how Grandma and Grandpa are going to make sure the bad guys go away who did this to them. We had to force ourselves to look at the pictures of what you did to our daughter so we can relate to the pain and sorrow that they had to endure. We can't reach inside their heads and help them understand and take the pain away, especially when we can't make our own go away.
This unholy trinity is as evil a group of individuals as I have seen. I dare say that all of us in our career have yet to see this level of evil, could work for the rest of our careers and could work for yet another career beyond that and not see this level of evil. I never imagined I would stand in front of you or any judge and ask you to sentence somebody for his third murder conviction and somebody else in the same group for his second. I still can't believe I'm standing here doing this. And although it sounds really odd to say, and I haven't quite figured out the right way to say it, in a very odd way, I'm certainly not grateful for what happened to Franny and what has happened to her family, but I am grateful that they came here to Jackson County to have Jackson County law enforcement rally behind their crime.
The prosecutor added, "I wish I had known her, and I hope I honored her in the way this case was handled. What everyone agreed on was that she had done an excellent job." All three men appealed their sentences.
All three men challenged their sentences.
The Michigan Court of Appeals has decided to uphold murder convictions against three men who killed a Jackson County woman as part of a botched murder-for-hire plot. Jackson County prosecutor Jerry Jarzinka says the men will most likely appeal to the state Supreme Court.
In 2020, the Michigan Supreme Court agreed to review the appeals filed by Rodney and Clifford. By 2022, attorneys representing Rodney and Clifford continued to file legal arguments seeking to reopen the trial, hoping to overturn the previous verdict. But to this day, there has been no official indication that those efforts have led to any concrete outcome. As for Cortez Butler, he also attempted to bring his case before a higher court, but his appeal was swiftly denied, effectively closing the door on his final legal options. Looking back on this process that stretched on for so many years, I cannot help but feel a deep heaviness, because while the legal proceedings may continue on paper, for Franny's family, time has been frozen since the summer of 2014 and no ruling, no sentence, can ever bring her back or fully fill the void left behind by her absence. As I bring this story to a close, I always find myself asking how a single chain of resentment and wrong choices could sweep up the fate of someone completely innocent like Franny, leaving behind an irreplaceable void for her family and the community she once called home. This case reminds me, and perhaps all of us, that danger does not always come from direct relationships, but sometimes from indirect links, from schemes that seem unrelated yet collide with another person's life in the most cruel way. Thank you for staying with me and listening to today's story on this true crime documentary journey. If you have any thoughts or emotions for Franny, please leave a comment as a way to remember her. Don't forget to share the video so her story can reach more people. Hit like if you found this content meaningful, and subscribe to the channel to continue this journey with me in future true crime documentary cases. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you in the next story.